Well, thanks for staying with us. Time now for Media Watch, through which will be walked through by James Credian. Hi, James.
Good evening, Georgia.
Good evening. Now, so we're starting off with the Socialists and the Greens in France. You've made a pact ahead of elections in 2012, but there is some controversy about whether they agree on nuclear policy, isn't there?
That's right. Now, since the German U-turn, Germany saying that they're going to try to leave nuclear energy definitively, France has been feeling the pressure, and in particular the Green Party has come out and said, we are totally against nuclear power. We want France to get out of its dependency on nuclear energy eventually. The Socialists are being much more pragmatic, and they sort of are depending on each other, I suppose, to be in a strong position to take on Nicolas Sarkozy in 2012. So this cartoon that we can see in the front page of Le Monde today is talking about that. Now, you can see François Hollande there on the right with his nuclear reactor, and Eva Joly being sort of all anti-nuclear, but they're supposedly representing the same pact, which I suppose a lot of people don't believe in, or don't quite see that they are on the same page, especially because yesterday they signed that pact, the leader of the Socialist Party and the leader of the Green Party, in a Paris hotel. And yet today, the paragraph on nuclear energy was taken out of that agreement after it had been signed by the two leaders of the party. So everyone was wondering, well, why? I mean, if you signed on it, why now is that agreement being changed? Well, it seems that the nuclear industry in France has weighed in and has exercised its influence and has lobbied the Socialist Party and got that paragraph removed quite extraordinarily. So you've got the nuclear industry, I suppose, showing the level of influence that it actually has, and it seems to be able to weigh in on a document between two political parties who are trying to establish policy. It's pretty extraordinary. And just in terms of the facts on that, we know that the head of EDF, that's the French electricity giant, Henri Proglio, we know that he allegedly did contact the head of the Socialist Party. We also know that Areva has admitted contacting François Hollande's spokesman to share his concerns about what that would mean, France leaving, or France getting rid of a certain type of nuclear fuel, because it gets into technicalities after that, MOX fuel, which is considered quite dangerous and used in a lot of nuclear power plants in France. So there you go, it shows the extensive influence of the nuclear sector in France.
Right, now, François Hollande has also unveiled his campaign team, hasn't he?
That's right. It's big news in France today. You can see it on the front page of Le Monde. They're talking about it, François Hollande's campaign team. And I suppose really it's the main thing to say here is that he is surrounding himself with a number of party faithful, people who were loyal to him. But there is one figure in particular. You can see him here on Atlantico, the website of this right-leaning website, Pierre Moscovici. Now, he was very close to Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Well, he's now going to be François Hollande's campaign spokesman. So you've got various other figures like that. Atlantico were saying the priorities for him were to make sure that his friends were included in this campaign team, this sort of smaller, more slimmed down team that he's going to be fighting with against Nicolas Sarkozy. Second priority, you've got to have a broad range of skills, and you've got to make sure, I suppose, that some of the enemies are on side as well. You have to keep the friends close, but the enemies closer, I guess. And also you've got to make sure that campaign team isn't too broad, that it's not the entire parliamentary party. So it was quite a difficult choice for him, apparently, and the French media is fascinated by that today, the choices that he made and the faces that will accompany him in the campaign.
All right, well, moving away from politics for the moment, there's been some controversy on French television last night, as I understand it, over a made-for-TV movie about the Nuremberg trials.
That's right. This was on the France 3 network last night. Now, they were showing a made-for-TV film called J'étais à Nuremberg. I was in Nuremberg. And what it did was it was a recreation of the Nuremberg trials, also showing the French role in that, because France had a representative at the Nuremberg trials. France was one of the allied forces, I suppose, and in that official role, they had a representative at the Nuremberg trials. But right after the telefilm, there was a debate, I suppose, discussing the issues that the film brought up. And a lot of the experts said, oh, that's, the film that we just saw, rubbish. There's a lot of historical errors in it. We don't agree with it at all. So the whole point was that this debate was meant to come out of the made-for-TV movie and discuss the facts that it had evoked. But actually, they were saying, a lot of this wasn't very factual at all. One key incident was when France's representative tried to shush his deputy, who was going to try to speak about the Vichy regime's role in deporting Jews. That conversation never happened. It never took place at all. And when the director of the TV movie was contacted, he said, look, this is a dramatization. You're trying to compress a massive historical event into, an hour, 2 hours of television. You've got to dramatize it and maybe even fictionalize certain interactions. And he said the main thing was to show that what they were trying to show was that France was present as an allied power at the Nuremberg trials, and that it took an awful long time for France's role, or the Vichy regime's role, in complying with the Nazis and deporting Jews to actually be recognised. So, very complicated way of explaining that there was this telefilm, and the debate afterwards totally picked it apart last night.
Art doesn't quite imitate life, apparently. Now, Benetton has caused quite a bit of a stir with a campaign showing some controversial kissing.
Speaking of art imitating life, this isn't art imitating life. Let's have a look at what they've done. It's a campaign that's being rolled out in cities around Europe at the moment across Benetton shops. Here's Merkel and Sarkozy. Let me just categorically state that moment never happened. You've also got Hu Jintao, or no, that's Obama and Chavez. Didn't happen either. But perhaps the most, I think you've even got this is a particularly unlikely image as well.
Scary thing
with Netanyahu and Mahmoud Abbas. Let's just say that's highly unlikely to have really happened. And in particular, this is the Pope and an imam. Now, actually, the Vatican got very upset about that and issued a statement saying that this was highly disrespectful. And it appears that this particular image is actually going to be withdrawn from that very provocative Benetton campaign. Benetton, of course, always known for their provocative advertising campaigns. But just a quick historical note, this campaign was inspired by not the front page of Charlie Hebdo, which I was going to talk about afterwards, but by this real-life kiss. This actually did happen. It was between the Soviet leader Brezhnev and the East German leader Honecker. It was in October 1979 in East Berlin, and apparently it was kind of de rigueur at the time for satellite state leaders to kind of give a big smack on the lips to the resident of the Kremlin. And this really happened. Hard to believe, really, because it looks just so incredibly romantic.
But I never realised political passion
so
could actually be a thing.
But I suppose more recently, the front page of the satirical paper Charlie Hebdo seems to, evoke memories of that as well. This was an imam kissing a cartoonist at Charlie Hebdo who had been, had a provocative front page the previous week. But it seems that's not what inspired this particular campaign.
Well, if they're aiming for provocative, they certainly delivered. Well, thanks very much for that roundup, James Creedon. Stay with us. Up next, it's Web News and a look at what's getting people talking online.